It's officially hurricane season.
Yeah, the water's past my ankles.
They've gone through a serious tornado.
Big story for us.
Are you ready?
Helene, we got flooded, just like we did during Milton, just like we did during Ian.
Last year, Southwest Florida was hit with 3 big storms.
Now I just have to get somebody to help me to get the things done.
But as always, the community came together.
And the community has been unbelievable.
Dried out.
This is just a little water. We'll get it dry.
Brushed off.
We got to put it back together as fast as we can.
And ultimately came out on top.
You're not going to stop my joy. You're not going to steal my joy. We're coming back. We are hurricane strong.
At Fox 4, we hope to shed a light on what's changed this year.
Forecasting the area of hurricane force winds out to 72 hours.
And how to be ready.
Having a better understanding of what is coming, earlier warnings.
As always, we are your trusted partner here in Southwest Florida.
Ms. Barbara was watching Fox 4.
We have a team of experts ready to guide you the whole way.
Take a look at what you can see behind me. Just around this street, it's become basically a river.
And provide you comfort in knowing we've been there before.
Hurricane season 2025 starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Storm Ready, a special edition of Fox 4. I'm certified meteorologist Trent Eric.
And I'm certified meteorologist Katie Walls.
We're here at Gilchrist Park, right next to the Charlotte Harbor in Punta Gorda, an area that flooded not once, but twice last fall.
Every storm season is different, and that's why we have to prepare for every scenario now, ahead of a storm.
Before we talk about what to expect and plan for this season, we want to take a look back and remember what happened last year. The 2024 season started with a bang. That is a monster. That is Hurricane Beryl. At Category 5, right out of the gate.
Everything is gone. Total devastation.
In August, Hurricane Debbie developed in the Gulf. Now tonight, Debbie continues to get stronger, bringing 8 inches of flooding to Cape Coral.
This fire station, Station 8 in Cape Coral, is out of commission because of flooding.
In September, Hurricane Helene developed.
Can't get a break. I don't know what's going to happen next.
But the Cat 4 brought catastrophic flooding to Florida's west coast.
Almost a football field and a half.
And is considered the deadliest hurricane in 20 years.
Feel like there's nothing left, hardly.
Less than 2 weeks later, Hurricane Milton exploded in the Gulf. Milton was a monster and the second Category 5 of this season.
There it is.
Oh, wow.
There it is. There it comes.
It brought destructive tornadoes to the state.
Tornado coming and people take it for granted. It's coming. It's here.
It sounded like a freight train.
Scariest thing I've ever been through.
Never have I experienced damage or the amount of tornadoes.
And the second wave of surge to Southwest Florida only beat by Ian.
Fixed everything up and blink of an eye, it's gone again.
The 2024 season was for the record books. There were 18 named storms, 11 hurricanes, 5 of those major hurricanes.
So that brings us to this year. What's in store? What's being predicted? NOAA's forecast is out for the season, and once again, we're expecting the season to be more active than normal.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is predicting between 13 to 19 named storms. Of those, 6 to 10 are expected to become hurricanes, and 3 to 5 hurricanes are forecast to become major.
Typically, we see more storms than average in a La Nina phase, but that's not the case this year.
To explain why we're predicting another active season, here's meteorologist Andrew Shipley. Like the National Hurricane Center, Colorado State University issues their own hurricane forecast, and this year they're calling for an above-average season. Fox 4 meteorologist Andrew Shipley and I spoke to CSU researcher Dr. Phil Klotzba about their forecast and why they expect it to be so active.
So we're forecasting an above-normal hurricane season.
This year, Colorado State University is forecasting 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, with 4 of those becoming major hurricanes, Category 3 or higher.
So above normal, but we're not forecasting the levels of activity that what we saw last year, where we had 11 hurricanes and 5 major hurricanes.
The outlook predicts that the 2025 hurricane season will be about 125% of the average season. By comparison, the 2024 season was about 130% of the average season, so down just a little bit. Dr. Klotzba says this has to do with the El Nino Southern Oscillation being closer to that neutral to La Nina phase.
And why that matters for hurricanes forming in the Atlantic thousands of miles away is basically it's how it changes basically where thunderstorms form in the Pacific, and the circulation out of those thunderstorms impacts levels of vertical wind shear.
That lower wind shear, along with above normal ocean temperatures, is why Colorado State University is expecting an active season.
So we emphasize a couple of things with our seasonal forecast. One is certainly, it only takes that one storm.
Colorado State will be issuing updates to their forecast throughout the season. The next forecast update comes out on June 11th. In North Fort Myers, meteorologist Andrew Shipley, Fox 4.
We learned a valuable lesson in Southwest Florida last year, especially here in Charlotte County. You see, a storm doesn't have to make landfall here for it to be dangerous and cause significant damage. When Hurricanes Helene and Milton roared up the coast, National Weather Service meteorologist in charge Robert Moyeda says they exposed one of the things that make Southwest Florida unique.
Storm surge associated with hurricanes impacting the Gulf Coast can spread over a very large area compared to other parts of the U.S. coastline.
Here's what he means. Helene was 160 miles off the coastline here of Charlotte Harbor, and we still saw 5 to 6 feet of storm surge. Now Milton was closer, making landfall about 40 miles north, but we still saw about 6 feet of surge here. And that's why Ben Abe's, director of Lee County Public Safety, says it's important to know your storm surge risk.
It was forecast for the area, that storm surge was realized, and that leads to, unfortunately, catastrophic damage to homes, and thankfully we had no loss of life associated with it.
The storm surge from Helene and Milton took some folks by surprise, especially people who have never been through a storm surge event. Jennifer Hubbard, the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Tampa, says the areas that were caught off guard, places in Charlotte and Sarasota counties, didn't have storm surge during Ian.
If you don't have a basis for understanding, you can't imagine 10 feet, of storm surge inundating your home, inundating businesses.
And storm surge can extend miles inland along creeks and rivers as well. Shell Creek rose 2.32 feet in Helene and 3.76 feet in Milton, 8 miles upstream from here in Lashley Park.
We learn from every storm. We learn from every hurricane that's either made landfall or come close to making landfall. Every storm has its own individual characteristics. One may be similar to another from the past, but they're all different in some way. So we try to learn lessons from each and every one, and then we apply that to the following year and years afterward.
Where we are standing in Punta Gorda, the water rose 5 to 6 feet in Hurricanes Helene and Milton, but there was no way to measure the water rising in real time.
This season, big upgrades are coming to Charlotte County. Our community correspondent Alex Orenchuk joins us with the welcome changes.
Right now in Charlotte County, when there's a high tide or a storm surge, it's measured like this. Crews find a water line and measure how high the water got. But it's not exactly accurate. I'm Fox 4 Charlotte County community correspondent Alex Orenchuk, and I've reported in the past about how that concerns my neighbors here. Well, now the county says it doesn't need the measuring tape anymore because it bought 5 new tidal sensors that can read exactly what the water's doing in real time around Charlotte Harbor.
All the windows blew out of the front of the building that faces the water.
People at the Punta Gorda Boat Club know all about storm surge. Hurricane Milton rocked this building last fall.
All the ceiling tiles were actually washed out of the ceiling. So the waves on top of the water were as high as the ceiling.
So what is that, 12 feet?
Yeah.
Bob Hickey with the boat club and past president of the Boaters Alliance tells me there used to be weather gauges in the harbor, but they got washed away. They didn't read the tides, but he says they were helpful.
Unfortunately, in the past 2 storms, some of the structures are completely gone. The equipment is gone.
So there's nothing out there right now?
Nothing. Nothing in Charlotte Harbor at all.
And that's a problem, not only during big storms, but also for boater safety. I spoke with Mark Chase about this issue last year. He says boaters have to rely on tide predictions, which can be inaccurate.
We use tide charts to go out with, and sometimes you get the wind like it's blowing right now. The wind can change the tide.
But that's all going to change. The county's water quality manager, Brandon Moody, says 5 new tide sensors that look like this are being placed around the county that can monitor what the water is doing in real time.
At their very base level, they just measure water height. That is it. The magic is in the data collection, the data storage, the ability for people to see it online, and for the data to be translated into a value that everybody can kind of understand and compare across the coast.
In Charlotte County, Alex Orenchuk, Fox 4.
I'm Fox 4 certified meteorologist Katie Walls in downtown Fort Myers, where Hurricane Ian scars are still ever present here. And this area was flooded by more than 7 feet of storm surge nearly 3 years ago. Last year, Hurricanes Milton and Helene produced another 5 feet of storm surge in this same area. The only way to measure that surge was with this lone NOAA weather sensor, not just here, but for all of Lee County. This year, that's changing.
After Hurricane Ian, we were looking for data and realized very quickly that the data really doesn't exist. You can wait for federal resources to come online, and if they do come online, that takes years.
But we don't have years. We have 6 months between the end of one hurricane season to the start of another. That's why after Ian, Benjamin Abus, Lee County's Director of Public Safety, and his team started looking for options and found a partner with Hohonu, a tidal gauge company based in Hawaii that has installed sensors in 16 states.
More and more frequently, we're seeing more impacts from higher than normal high tides, storm surges, and episodic flooding events. And the granularity that comes from the NOAA Federal Tide Gauge Network just isn't everywhere and isn't solving problems for everyone. And so Hohonu empowers communities by putting new sensors in new locations to give access to data to more people.
Brian Glazer is the co-founder and CEO of Hohonu. They began installing devices last hurricane season in Lee County to test how they perform.
And successfully deployed the first 8 ahead of, some ahead of Hurricane Helene and the rest ahead of Hurricane Milton. And then we're finalizing the placement of an additional 8 to 10 across the community.
8 tidal gauges and 3 land sensors are currently online for a total of 11, placed in coastal areas like this one on Matlacha Bridge and on land in areas notorious for flooding like this one in St. James City.
That's really important for us because we don't have to wait for people to call and tell us there's a problem. We'll know that there's water over the roadway, we can react.
Lee County's All Hazards Fund covered the cost for a fraction of a NOAA tidal gauge. All sensor data are publicly available on the Hohonu website and iOS app, so you can track second by second where the water is rising and which areas may be flooding. You can find that link on our website, fox4now.com.
I'm your Fort Myers Beach community correspondent, Anvar Ruziev, here in Times Square, which looks very different than it did 3 years ago before Hurricane Ian. And when it comes to preparing for future storms, the people on Fort Myers Beach do it a little differently.
The recovery effort here in Manistota Key has been intense ever since Hurricanes Helene and Milton. I'll show you how far the islands come from the destruction and how the residents here are feeling heading into this hurricane season.
Tornadoes ripped through this part of southwest Florida last year during Hurricane Milton, and I actually saw it firsthand. Now some communities inland are still recovering.
Welcome back. Last hurricane season was a stark reminder that tropical systems produce many hazards beyond flooding from storm surge and heavy rain.
Hours before the storm surge even arrived, Hurricane Milton's outer rain bands produced an unprecedented 45 tornadoes. The outbreak more than doubled the previous record for tornadoes in a single day in Florida. Milton's tornadoes killed 6 people near Fort Pierce and Vero Beach and injured 14.
Here's community correspondent Bella Line.
The people who live around here will never forget when tornadoes from Hurricane Milton ripped through this part of southwest Florida. And some people here in Clewiston are still rebuilding. I'm Fox 4's Bella Line, standing in the path of where one tornado took out trailers on Cross Training Ministries land. And the founder actually tells me this gave them a fresh start.
Charging up the driveway, this is what barreled towards the men at Cross Training Ministries, a drug rehabilitation program in Clewiston.
About 15 minutes before the tornado hit, they saw a black cloud coming.
Founder Michael Pittman says the residents went next door to the sheriff's office training facility to take shelter.
Lifted this trailer up and then it destroyed the trailer that their men were living in. You know, one of our mattresses was found a mile away on the other side of State Road 80.
Leaving this path of destruction.
I've never seen so many tornadoes that spun off at one time.
But thankfully, Pittman says no one was hurt.
I wasn't upset. I was glad the men were safe, and that was really my only concern because I knew God's going to take care of us, and He has.
Now Pittman says they have felt the love from their community with the donations of up to $300,000 to get back on their feet. But they're doing more than just recovering. Pittman says they're actually expanding their program and building a house to fit 20 men.
They say it takes a village. Well, we have a great village around us at Cross Training.
Reporting in Clewiston, I'm Bella Line, Fox 4.
I'm your Fort Myers Beach community correspondent, Anvar Ruziev, here in Times Square, which looks very different than it did 3 years ago before Hurricane Ian. And when it comes to preparing for future storms, the people on Fort Myers Beach do it a little differently.
It's a day that people on Fort Myers Beach remember like it was yesterday.
It was scary. You know, you knew all day long, and anyone that was here on the island knew that at any minute it could be their last minute.
That's Rick Lowry. You may remember him as Rick on the roof when he protested FEMA after the storm. But before his legal battles, he was Rick under the roof. Winds from Ian blew the rooftop from a neighboring condo building right on top of Rick's house. His controversial garage saved his life.
Landed right where we're standing and crushed my home and the home next door, and my family, my wife and my son, had evacuated next door.
In a desperate attempt to see if his family was still alive, Rick tied himself to an extension cord and swam through the surge to the neighbor's house. Once there, he frantically began to check the bedrooms for his wife and son.
When I opened the first door, it was crushed. There was nothing left of the house. I opened the second door, same thing. Everything was crushed. My heart was pattering out of my chest, and I hit on the third door, and no one was answering. It was their last bedroom, and I'm like, please answer. And then finally I heard a faint voice. Went in there and got a big hug and jumped on the floor and let my heart settle down a little bit. So
after the waters receded and the clouds parted, the destruction remained, some of which couldn't be repaired. I met Jo Knobloch as she was helping displaced animals after the storm. Her harrowing experience deeply impacted me as she shared that she lost her husband.
There's so much that you can't get out of your mind about this storm. And I think those of us that were here, went through it, we're in the water, we're trying to save animals and save people. I mean, you can't get over it. You just can't. My husband drowned. I lost him too. So it's just a bad thing that happened. And I hope it doesn't ever happen again. It's just too much loss for all of us.
In Fort Myers Beach, Anvar Ruziev, Fox 4.
One of the areas of southwest Florida that was hit hardest by Hurricanes Helene and Milton is here on Manasota Key. I'm Fox 4 Charlotte County community correspondent Alex Orenchuk, and although the recovery efforts on the island have been intense, the destruction those hurricanes brought is still evident almost everywhere you look. But my neighbors and business owners here tell me they're cautiously optimistic heading into this hurricane season.
With the drinks flowing and the sun shining on the Sandbar Restaurant's new tiki hut, it's hard to tell that this place was almost completely wiped out by the hurricanes. This is what it looked like just days after Hurricane Milton.
They think the water actually went up and over the roof of our building because we're kind of set low.
It's one of the Manasota Key Group's trio of waterfront restaurants on the island.
Everything was wet, muddy, salty.
Ashley Dignam with the company says employees banded together to get the Sandbar and Lock and Key back open after the storms.
Most of our cleanup crew and the demo here was our kitchen staff.
Oh, really?
They came every day for months, helping do work, demo, construction, everything.
The third restaurant, Magnolia's on the Bay, still isn't open quite yet, but Dignam says the group is more prepared now than ever.
You know, I feel like everybody got smarter. We used more waterproof building materials or made us get rid of stuff we didn't need so we don't have to clean it up later.
It wasn't just water damage that people on the island had to contend with. It was sand, several feet of it, that the hurricanes dumped across the island.
The last time, Alex, I think we were here, we had like 3 feet of sand up and down these streets.
I met Anne Marie Miller just days after the hurricane as people in the Gulf to Bay community were digging their homes out of the sand. That sand was then piled into the Inglewood Beach parking lot known as Mount Milton.
So if you look now, we are all clear and it's absolutely beautiful here. People are getting back on their feet. They're excited.
After months of repairs and reopenings, Manasota Key is getting back to normal, just in time for hurricane season.
The beauty of it all was that people came together here and they helped one another.
On Manasota Key, Alex Orenchuk, Fox 4.
After 3 floods, a North Fort Myers couple lifted their home 11 feet off the ground, and they're almost ready to move back in.
As Charlotte and Lee counties upgrade their ability to measure water levels, there are some important changes the National Hurricane Center is making this season.
Meteorologist Andrew Shipley joins us with what we need to know.
Over the past several years, the National Hurricane Center has not only been improving the accuracy of their forecasts, but how those forecasts are released. I'm FOX 4 meteorologist Andrew Shipley, and starting in 2025, the famous cone will start to be issued even earlier.
We're going to be issuing advisories for storms that are still in their formative stages. In other words, even before they get a name.
And with forecast advisories being released further ahead of potential impacts, that will give you more time to prepare.
Before, those would only begin at 48 hours prior to expected impacts. And now with the 72 hours in advance, not only is that information coming out well before wind watches and warnings would start to be issued, but then we do have that even extra time for getting that watch out up to 60 hours before those impacts are expected.
This becomes even more important as stronger hurricanes become more the norm.
From 2017 to 2024, we have seen as many Category 4 and 5 landfalls as we had in the period from 1960 to 2016.
And impacts can be felt far away from landfall, just like we saw with Hurricane Milton.
People have to understand that these impacts are wide-ranging. You know, whether it's tornadoes in the outer bands, like with Milton, for example, whether it's storm surge extending far away from the center, like we often see in the Gulf, and winds that can spread very far inland.
The Hurricane Center will also continue to issue its new experimental cone that started the middle of last hurricane season. The new cone includes watches and warnings not only along the coast, but also inland.
Think of the hurricane or the tropical storm as a very large weather system that's impacting many areas of the state of Florida, for example. The cone is only telling us where the center of the storm is more likely to be, but it's not telling us where the impacts are going to be, and that's what we have to remember.
Meteorologist Andrew Shipley, Fox 4.
During hurricane season, the City of Fort Myers staff tells me through technology and lessons learned from the past, they prepare year-round, and so should you. I'm your Fort Myers community correspondent, Miyoshi Price, and I'm taking you inside the Real-Time Crime Center to get a behind the scenes of how it's all done.
One of the first lifted homes in this North Fort Myers neighborhood is almost ready for move-in. I'm Fox 4's Austin Chagarotsky, and I'll show you what it took to get this house 11 feet off the ground.
Welcome back to Storm Ready, a special edition of Fox 4. I'm certified meteorologist Trent Eric.
And I'm certified meteorologist Katie Walls. Where we are standing right now is Zone A, an area highly susceptible to flooding. So how do you know if your home is at risk?
The most important thing you can do is know your zone. Zones are labeled A through F in Southwest Florida based upon your likelihood to flood. Zone A is the most vulnerable and the most likely to be evacuated first, and Zone F is most likely to be evacuated last. Keep in mind, these evacuation zones are not the same as FEMA flood zones. Also, if you're in a mobile or manufactured home, you should safely evacuate.
But even when evacuations are ordered, some people don't leave. Meteorologist Andrew Shipley explores why people stay despite orders.
If a hurricane does come our way this season, depending on the forecast, evacuations could be issued. But as we've seen with some of our recent storms, some people choose to leave while others stay. I'm Fox 4 meteorologist Andrew Shipley, and I spoke to a researcher at the University of South Florida about why people make those decisions.
You take a storm that could be a Cat 1, people really let their guard down and think, well, I'm not going to evacuate. And then there could be significant loss of life and destruction from a Cat 1.
Dr. Collins has been studying social sciences around hurricanes for the past 10 years. She says her research has shown that people rely too much on the Saffir-Simpson scale.
And so people are making their decisions to evacuate or not based on that category, which is just based on the wind. But we know that a hurricane causes other hazards, particularly the storm surge flooding or rainfall flooding.
And as we saw with Hurricane Helene, a storm off the coast can still cause significant storm surge well away from the forecast cone.
Well, first of all, they often focus on the center of it, which they shouldn't. And sometimes they think if their residence is outside of that cone, they're completely safe.
Dr. Collins says people's neighbors can also really influence their decision.
And sometimes if people's neighbors are not evacuating, people feel more comfortable staying if that's their neighbor's decision.
Past experience can also play a factor, especially for people who have been directly impacted.
Because they said never again, having experienced what they experienced, would they ever stay for something that could potentially be as bad.
And the opposite can happen when people evacuate, but the storm never comes.
You get that miss, even though it was forecasted to come to you, then that makes you a little bit vulnerable because you kind of get this overconfidence.
And if a droplet system or a hurricane does come our way this hurricane season, our team of meteorologists at Fox 4, including myself, will bring you reliable information to make the right decisions for your family. In North Fort Myers, meteorologist Nate Shipley, Fox 4.
No matter where you are in the city of Fort Myers during a hurricane, the city is telling me you need to have a plan and to know your zone. I'm your Fort Myers community correspondent, Miyoshi Price, and because I work in this community every day, I use my connections with the city and first responders to get a behind-the-scenes look at how they monitor your area during the storm. Look familiar? That's Fort Myers Fire Department telling people to leave the area during last year's hurricanes. There are vulnerable areas. The city's emergency response team, which includes collaboration with police, fire, public works, and utilities, says they know the problem areas.
Our biggest flooding areas, and I know PD will go into this probably in greater detail, would be along Palm Beach, the Dean Park Brook Hill area, along West 1st Street are probably our biggest areas.
The city's emergency manager, Christy Matthews, tells me the city has a new app you should download. It's called Fort Myers EM Florida on your app store.
And we're going to utilize Channel 98 this year, which is something we've never done.
She says download your checklist and know what your specific hazards are.
So are you in a flood zone? Are you in an evacuation zone? What kind of home do you have? How is your roof?
This way you can mitigate your disaster. She says Public Works is monitoring our sewage systems and clearing out debris heading into season.
They do double checks just to make sure, and then when there is a storm out there, they're all over it.
Fort Myers Fire Department says it responded more than 3 times their usual volume of calls during Hurricane Milton. When the storm is here, fire and police are on high alert and watching.
There's views of areas that are closer to the river, and so
I got a behind-the-scenes tour of the Real-Time Crime Center, where they have a view of multiple cameras up throughout the city. Lieutenant Jesus Ramos with Fort Myers Police says they can anticipate something before being alerted.
Every little bit helps. Not also can we see it, but also we can get help from in here when we do respond, because someone behind the camera may be seeing something that we're not seeing.
Ramos says whether there's a storm or not, be mindful of the signs that are set up to protect you.
We ask the public is to be mindful of what they're trying to get into and to cooperate with law enforcement, because we're trying to get everybody to be safe.
In Fort Myers, Miyoshi Price, Fox 4.
The Caloosahatchee flooded Lockmore Waterway estates not once, but 3 times in recent years. First Hurricane Ian, then Helene and Milton. And for some people here, rebuilding wasn't enough. They had to rise above it. I'm Fox 4's North Fort Myers community correspondent Austin Chagarodsky. I've covered this neighborhood through the storms. I've shown you all the preparations, the cleanups, and now the comeback. Several homeowners chose to lift their homes out of water's way, and one of the first lifts to be finished is just ahead. Check it out. Dick and Peggy Marting's home now stands 11 feet off the ground, with just a little work left before they can move back in. So I came back to see how they're feeling and what this moment means to them.
The Marting's home doesn't just look different, it stands different. Lifted up to be safe in the future. For Peggy Marting, it's also about the little things like laundry days at home and getting out of the camper.
I'm ready to get back in our house, and we love the house. We think they did a great job on it, so we're very, very thankful.
But getting to this point hasn't been easy. They say they decided to lift after Hurricane Ian brought 4 feet of water into their home.
The house was pretty much devastated. And you know, we got through that, had a person who helped us fix up the house, get it all back to normal, bought all new furniture, and then Hurricane Helene hit and had 18 inches of water with that one.
And 2 weeks later, Milton flooded it again. This is what the neighborhood looked like. Streets flooded out and surge creeping into homes. The Martings say they initially planned a 6-foot lift, which would have been completed before Helene and Milton. But then they say the requirements changed.
FEMA changed their guidelines, and and said, we're not allowing any lifts less than 10 feet. And so that kind of changed our plans. Davy Shoring then had to go back to the engineers and the architects and redo all the plans.
They say that set them back nearly a year, but they weren't alone. Several neighbors are now finishing their own lifts too. I showed you what this process looks like. This was Scott Sorensen's house when the lifting company Davy Shoring started the lift.
We dig under the house with some tunnels and we push down our Permalock piling, and that gives us a really good formula for then placing our jacks on and then lifting the house up out of the ground, proceeding with other methods of crib blocks and frames to lift the house up to the desired height.
Chris Ellis, the operations supervisor of Davy Shoring, said these lifts are gaining momentum in coastal communities like this one as a faster, more affordable alternative to rebuilding.
So many people have been told that they have to tear down their houses and build new, which is a big 3-year process and horrendous money, sometimes 3 to 4 times more than the option we're offering.
Back at the Martings house, a few final pieces remain, like railings, paint, and countertops before utilities can be fully connected. And since our first story aired, they say dozens of people have stopped by to ask about the process, many considering lifts themselves.
It's worth looking at that option. I would encourage people, because I think most people sort of just dismiss it. But I think having been through the process, if you don't have patience, you'll learn to have patience, and that's good.
Reporting in North Fort Myers, I'm Austin Chagarodsky, Fox 4 News.
When it comes to a storm, you can never be too prepared. Having an up-to-date hurricane supply kit is one of the most important things you can do beforehand. Considering the hurricane damage we've experienced in the past few years, the Florida Division of Emergency Management recommends having at least 7 days of supplies.
A basic kit, well, that should include a first aid kit, flashlights, extra batteries, a fan, external batteries for your cell phones, non-perishable food and water, and you should have 1 gallon of water per person per day. And don't forget about prepping for your pets. Have at least 7 days worth of food and water for your animals as well.
Make sure they have collars and tags with up-to-date information. And don't forget all medications for you and your pets. The Florida Division of Emergency Management recommends having a supply that can last at least 2 weeks. You should have several options ready to know where you'll go if a storm is approaching.
If your first option does not work and you have no other safe place to go, there will be emergency public shelters. The shelters will not likely have electricity for the majority of your stay, and space will be severely limited.
In Lee County, places including Dunbar High School, the Estero Rec Center, and the North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts usually become shelters.
We'll be sure to post all of Southwest Florida locations in the event they open on fox4now.com.
From 2017 to 2024, we have seen as many Category 4 and 5 landfalls as we had in the period from 1960 to 2016.
6 major hurricanes have rocked Florida's Gulf Coast in the past 8 years, including Ian, Helene, and Milton, all tracked by warning coordination meteorologist Jennifer Hubbard and the National Weather Service team in Tampa.
It doesn't help with the fact that we have been seeing those higher Gulf water temperatures that have, really helped to fuel, especially with that rapid intensification in recent years.
Rapid intensification officially occurs when a hurricane's wind speed increases by at least 35 miles per hour in 24 hours. Let's look back at Hurricane Milton, for example. Milton exploded from a Category 1 to Category 5 in the span of just 24 hours. Its wind speed increased by 95 miles per hour in that 24-hour period, the third highest rate of rapid intensification ever recorded.
People are still recovering even today.
So how can we study what's changing in the ocean to better understand what's changing in the atmosphere? That's where OceanScope comes in, a collaboration between Royal Caribbean and the University of Miami that has been gathering ocean and weather data from cruise ships for more than 2 decades.
The ocean and the atmosphere are coupled, so they influence each other, of course.
Dr. Josefina Olascoaga is an ocean science professor at the University of Miami Rosenstiel School and works on the OceanScope project.
We have wind, pressure, humidity, temperature and sea surface temperature, salinity, chlorophyll.
Those are just a few measurements taken with these automated instruments on board 4 Royal Caribbean ships. By providing real-time data on weather and ocean conditions along the ship's path, from the surface to depths of more than 3,000 feet, scientists from NASA, NOAA, and around the world can follow ocean trends and track changes.
Well, the most important thing is the repetition and the volume of data that we are getting in certain areas.
Because the ships typically cruise the same route regularly, they've collected extensive data for more than 20 years, from the Caribbean Sea to the Galapagos, North Atlantic, and even to the Mediterranean, exploring the delicate connection between the ocean, weather, and climate. I'm Fox 4 certified meteorologist Katie Walls.
Here in Mariner Village in Martin County, it was the twisters from Hurricane Milton that caused all the damage and gave homeowners here a quick lesson in how to deal with homeowners insurance.
There was never a part that was okay.
It's been a challenging 6 months for Barbara DeMarco. Her claim finally settled and roof repairs now around the corner. And she has some advice for all of us.
We, at the time, figured we need to keep records because we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to work our way through this. So we wrote down everybody we spoke to, and we had a notebook, an ongoing notebook of everything we were doing.
Record keeping with insurance is rule number 1. Robert Norberg of Arden Insurance in Lantana tells me, take the time to find your policy and review it.
Also take a look at the hurricane deductible, because that is a big number on most policies. Make sure you're aware of it now, because as we've seen in the past, that deductible is triggered when there is a hurricane watch or warning anywhere in the state of Florida.
He also says it's a good idea to snap a picture of your policy in your phone, along with photos and videos of the outside and inside of the house. And after a storm, contact your insurance company right away.
The primary thing is, after a claim, immediately call your insurance company. That gets the claim on the books, gets it started properly. And there are times, if you use a third party, you give up or sacrifice some of your coverage limits.
No one knows when or where that next storm will come, but being prepared to deal with a storm is the one thing everyone should do.
One of the main reasons people don't evacuate during hurricanes is because of their pets. Well, we want to make sure that you're prepared this hurricane season. Should an evacuation be issued, we want to make sure that you stay safe as well as your fur babies.
During Irma, we did have, at the beginning when it first started evacuating, we had 2 pet-friendly shelters. At the end of evacuation, all the shelters were pet-friendly, and that's what we did with Ian too. People are either going to leave their pets behind or not leave because of their pets.
While it varies from county to county, in Lee County, all domesticated animals are welcome in emergency public shelters. But Karen Frick, the public information specialist for Lee County Animal Domestic Services, explains a shelter should be your last resort.
See who you have that are friends or family that are outside of flood zones, that are more inland, that you can possibly go stay with them. Have that set up ahead of time. That is the best alternative if you have to evacuate, is to go to someone's house that you are familiar with and that your pet might be familiar with.
Another option, pet-friendly hotels. Websites such as petswelcome.com list hotels that are friendly to you and your 4-legged family members, and you don't have to travel far. Have at least 3 in mind in different directions, and be sure to call first to make sure they can accommodate you.
The best thing you can do for your pet to plan ahead is to make sure they are microchipped.
If you and your pet are separated, Frick says that offers the best chance to be reunited.
It's only $10 in our clinic. Make an appointment. Can't get much cheaper than that. Or if you go to one of our vaccine clinics, it's free.
Just like we have hurricane prep kits, you want to build one for your pets too. They should include a collar and leash for cats and dogs with ID tags, water and food bowls, health records and medication in a waterproof bag, toys and bedding, 1 gallon of water per animal per day, and plenty of food.
You want to have food for at least, they say 2 days, I say 2 weeks. After Ian, buffer that more.
Frick says that an airline crate is the best way to protect your pets during a storm, whether you're staying at home or at a shelter, because it helps reduce what can be stressful sounds.
This is what's called an airline crate. They're the ones that you take on the airline, and they buffer sound. So these are much better inside any kind of storm for the pets than the wire ones. If you only have a wire one, it's fine. Make sure you have the blanket you can put over it.
And just like humans, pets have just as much anxiety about evacuating. So if you do have to go to a shelter as your last option, just make sure you have things that can keep them comfortable and calm. In Lee County, I'm Fox 4 certified meteorologist Katie Walls.
Power. It's the most crucial element in surviving and rebuilding after a storm. And no one knows that better than Dominique Papilla, owner of All Phase Electric, who got hit hard by Hurricane Ian.
Well, the backup power was a tremendous asset for us because after the storm, 24 hours after Ian, the water had subsided. So, and there was no electricity for 2-3 weeks that we didn't have any electricity, except for my generator.
Dominique has seen the advancement of generators over the years. So I asked him, what is one of the most important new features you can find?
Monitoring of the generator itself on your app, on your phone, and also how much fuel we have left in the tank with an app. So that's important to know when, especially in an emergency.
All Phase Electric is a family business, and Dominique's son Anthony says he stays on top of all the new technology.
The biggest difference between All Phase and our competitors is our ability to integrate a bunch of different systems together seamlessly and actually enhance them. So solar, battery backup, and generator.
What are some good suggestions that you make as we head into hurricane season to make sure that generator is ready and working?
Well, I always recommend that you at least start it up once a month throughout the whole year. You're starting it up, checking the battery's good if it has a battery. If it's crank start, make sure that it starts up, produces power. Just give the whole unit a good test.
And Dominique says it's not too late to get a generator for this season.
Time is limited. But we can get them in. You have to move. You have to think ahead a little bit. Sure. There's planning. The biggest problem is permitting.
Once you get a generator, practice using it and keep it ready to go.
So as we kick off another hurricane season, remember, preparation is power.
Southwest Florida has weathered the worst and proven time and time again that we're stronger together. No matter what the season brings, Fox 4 will be right here with you before, during, and after the storm.
Head to fox4now.com to rewatch any of these stories and turn on weather alerts to get notified when a storm is coming near you.
Stay safe,
stay ready,
and stay with Fox 4.